So next up, we have Scott Eastburn, a new presenter. He's going to show us how he scratch builds a narrow gauge work train. This is going to be a two-part series. And welcome to New Track, Scott. And obviously I've seen your slideshow. It's beautiful work, and I'm interested to see the reaction to our viewers. Sure, it'll be positive like mine was. So, Scott.
Thanks, guys. This whole build began with my pursuit of the NMRA's Master Model Railroader certificates, and in particular the CAR certificate. If you're familiar with that, part of the task is to build 8 cars, but 4 of them have to be scratch built. And so I have a freelanced layout railroad called the Old Slow and Easy, and it has a lumber company on the layout called the Ripcord Coleman Lumber Company, and everything has a story on my layout. And so there was a need for a work train, and so I decided that the 4 scratch build cars were going to be for the Ripcord Coleman Lumber Company. So I started out with simple 3D printed uh, flat car kits from Sean Williams. I don't know if you guys know Sean, but I purchased probably half a dozen of these, and I had them laying around, so I thought I would use them. And this was going to be a 4-car train. The second car I'm going to share with you tonight was actually the first car I built, but that kind of inspired the rest. And so I'm going to share with you the foreman's car, and then I'm also going to share with you the tool car, or the caboose as we call it. Now everything has a story, and so um, the the foreman's car, old Ripcord Coleman, he doesn't take the chance of the management of his uh, log camp to the hired hand. So being a control freak, he decided he wanted his own foreman car built, and so he tasked the shop guys to build him a car so he could go out and be on the road with the crews. And so we started out with a flat car from Sean Williams, just used some scale lumber to build a frame around it so that they would all be the same width and length. I put scribed basswood decks on each one of them. And for the core of the foreman's car, I wasn't going to do an interior on it because it's so small. So I went out to the garage and I grabbed a 2x4 and I cut it in half and then shaped it on my table saw to be the interior core of the flat car. Brought that back into the train room, attached it to the flat car frame, on top of the flat car frame, and I'm constantly wandering the aisles of Hobby Lobby while my wife is looking for other things. And in their dollhouse section, I found this Mayberry Street wainscoting, and it's just a scribed sheet, which you see there on the left. The the boards on it are about an 8. They're about a scale 8 inches, and so it's a $1.99 for like a 3.5 inch by 12 foot or 12 inch piece of this stuff. So I pick it up whenever they have it in stock, and I thought, well, this would be a good use for this little project. So I use this siding, and it's a little bit odd because it's 8 inch. The boards are about 8 inches wide, and there's like a 1 inch gap in between each board. So it just looks like it's kind of haphazardly thrown together. So I put that siding on the sides, and then use some chipboard for the roof. I love using this chipboard stuff for the roof because you can score it in the middle and fold it, and it just works great. So I installed the roof. Um, Here you can see what the ends look like with that wainscoting, that dollhouse wainscoting. Added some wood trim underneath to just dress it up a little bit. Now this is the foreman's car, so we're going to spend a little money on this car, so it's going to be a little neater than the others. The second image is just showing you the frame and how I um, I had to carve out the openings for the coupler pockets. And then I just took my X-Acto knife and a dental pick and scribed board lines and nail holes along it all the way around. And then I just used some light brown India ink stain and stained it. Built a Z-brace door. The little doorknob there, if you go down the necklace bead aisle of Hobby Lobby, they've got all kinds of little pins and things on their aisles. And so these are like an antique bronze ball with a long pin underneath it. And so I buy these by, you can get them like 50% off. You spend about $2, you get about 30 of them. And they work great for O-scale doorknobs. They have them in these round balls and they also have flats. So I pick up a packet or two every time I'm in there. And so that little doorknob is just something a girl would make a necklace out of. I added a Grant Line smokestack because in this work car, it's going to have heat. Um, on the end, I framed in a window. Again, the core is solid, so you're not going to see into the car. So I just put a red curtain. The red curtain is just craft crepe paper, the stuff you string up at your kids' parties, and framed in the window. And I stained the wood deck uh, just a green India ink. I moved on to the roof, and I added the shingles here on this are better than scale models, saber-tooth shingles. Glued those on with canopy glue. Started to weather them a bit, and then also bent them up and kind of weathered them a little bit. Added a Grant Line step just on the one side by the door because old Ripcord doesn't want people climbing up on his car. Um, in that image to the right, just put some railings, just using phosphor bronze wire bent railings to get up and into the car. That little green box um, is a place for all the work crew to drop their time cards off at the end of the day. As we get a little further, you'll see I put a little sign on that. So when you finished your day of work, you filled out your time card, dropped it in the box on the foreman's car, and you get paid the next day. I custom printed decals on my computer. I have a Canon printer that I can print decals on. I can do everything but white. I had created this logo for the rest of the lumber company, the freight cars and things like that that'll be attributed to it. And so I just repurposed them for the work car. And every car in this train will have decals that I custom printed. And so the foreman's office is on the side. My grandfather worked years and years ago. He's since passed away. He worked for the Weyerhaeuser Timber Company in Oregon, and he was a heavy diesel mechanic. And he passed away at 72. So the car number is significant because it's how old my grandfather was when he passed away. And so you see the car with the decals on each side. Did the same thing on each end. You can see the time card slot there now has a sign on it. And then on the end of the car, I put a brake wheel on there. The brake wheel is just out of my scrap box, but underneath the brake wheel, the frame or the base for it is actually you know how when you buy a brand new 9-volt battery, they come with those plastic things stuck to the top of them. Well, I took one of those off and used my Dremel and ground it down to make it look like some sort of a base. Then used a piece of wire, and then the cast on the side frame it's a ratchet. I think I got that off of Etsy somewhere. It's got KD number 158 couplers on it, and then the red box is the power. This is you'll see in part 2. I built a dynamo car that goes right behind this one in the train, and once you get up to the camp, they can hook the dynamo car up to Ripcord's car, and he'll have power inside his little foreman's office. And so that's just piece of wood with some phosphor bronze bent for hinges and a couple of those pins that you'll find on the jewelry aisle of Hobby Lobby, where you'd hook up the wires. Um, so in this build, all the scratch built supplies was 2 pine blocks just from the garage. I just picked up a couple of scrap pieces of 2x4, the chipboard roof, all the scale wood for the frame, um, the card box, the electrical base, all that kind of stuff was just scraps. And then the dollhouse siding uh, from Mayberry, some .020 uh, brass wire, um, and then anywhere where I needed like the hinges, that's actually foil tape. You can get most of the hardware stores will have it. Home Depot foil tape that you'll see in air conditioning units. That stuff is great for making different kind of hinges and stuff because it's got a self-adhesive back and you can cut it to any shape. It takes dental pick really nicely to make little indentations. You'll see that even more on the next car I'll show you. Um, just in little small metal pins and different things. I love to just look around the house and see what I can use to make something out of. And then I obviously use some Grant Line parts. The wheels are KD number 300s and the couplers are 156s. It's got some lead weight in the car frame to give it a little bit more weight. And then the better than scale sawtooth shingles. Um, again, all based on or built on a Sean Williams flat car. Now, here's probably my favorite car in the whole train. And this is the Stubbs tool car. And this is kind of what started the whole project. My grandfather was a heavy diesel mechanic, and so he would have been the guy that would have been the tool man, the repair guy on the work train. And you'll see a figure that I painted for this car. My grandfather was missing his index finger on his right hand. And so this figure you're going to see, he's called Stubbs because I cut the finger off of Stubbs to model after my grandfather. But again, I started with just one of these Sean Williams flat car frames, built up the frame on both sides. A previous project, I had a Bachmann On30 passenger car that I wanted to shorten. So I cut a chunk out of it. And that's what you see there, that remaining chunk. I had that laying around. And as I started to build this, I'm like, I can probably use that for something. And so I grabbed that little piece of passenger car, decided that would be kind of the basis for this car. You'll see a little bit later, this car is numbered 1/6 because that piece is exactly 1/6 of a Bachmann stock passenger car. So I took that piece of car, put it on top of the flat car base, trimmed some wood on both ends to, I just would glue a piece of 1x6 or something on each end and then carve it and sand it to, so it followed the contour to kind of close in the roof. Again, scribed wood on the deck. I said that I like to look around the house and find things. Well, Stubbs's work car's got to have a stove in it. And so I had a box full of ballpoint pens laying around. And on the very bottom of that stove that you see on the left-hand side, I had this pen that had this cool little engraving on it. So I started there and I just broke apart a bunch of ballpoint pens and then glued them together and painted them. And it looks like a reasonable stove somebody in the shop would have just cobbled together to put something to keep this car warm on the road. Painted it up and installed it in the car. Hand carved the sideboards on the passenger car. Started adding molding. Added some fresh windows on the inside.
Hey, Scott.
Yep.
We're going to have to pause here and continue this next week from this point on. I'd like to give everybody a chance to ask some questions here before we move on. Does anybody have any questions on that? And we can start on the second car next week. If we need to go to a three-part series, we can do that as well. But does anybody have any questions for Scott on his
Yeah, no problem.
construction?
Yeah, Scott, have you already submitted your SOQ for the CARS AP certificate?
Oh yeah, yep. I've already received this certificate. This was one of the first. Actually, this was one of the first two certificates I earned.
Awesome. Nicely done.
Yeah, the whole ensemble is quite striking. Your first slide is just beautiful work.
Right.
And like I say, if necessary, we'll go to three parts. But so thank you for presenting this evening, and we'll look forward to the continuation next week. Okay.